so many questions about the Mexican Strat versus American Strat, and the number one question was, well, what would I do to upgrade a Mexican Strat? And I know everyone suggests over and over again upgrading the pickups, and all that is important. That's a sound thing, but for me, the way it plays is really more important to me, because that's where I get my inspiration right away from, is how it plays. Then the sound comes in second. So let's go ahead and see what things we can do to make your Mexican Strat better, especially without breaking the bank. Well, I would do two things that are very important to me. First, I would put a locking set of Fender tuning keys. Now, there's a reason why I say this. These will directly fit, which we'll explain in a second, so you don't need a tech or anyone. You can do this yourself in about 15 minutes. The second thing is another Fender part. I will flash the part right now. It's a Fender part you can order. It's a bone nut from Fender, made for the vintage reissue Fender Strats, and you should be able to pop it right into the Mexico nut. Is just pretty straightforward, and we'll show you how to pop that out and stick this one in and do that just as easy. So basically what you want to do is just take off the old tuners, use a socket wrench. You can use that. I have this tool, which is the ESP tool you can get at Stu Mac, or just I think on Amazon, and it pretty much does the job, as you can see. And then once they're loose, you can do it by hand. It's pretty straightforward. And this is what I want to show you. Take that off, take your thumb, push that down, and you'll see these two tangs right there. And I just put this together real fast, just so I know where it's at. The two holes are going to be for the tangs. Let's do that. All right, so the important thing to remember about the locking tuners from Fender is that they're staggered. In other words, they are going down as we go. So you'll notice that you just want to take the box and hold it like this. When you flip this up, you'll see that this one has a 3. Can you see the number 3? That lets you know that's the short one. Then, of course, I think the beginning one will be a number 1. And you can see it's just one little line. It's very hard to see. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this tuner, just the way it sits, and take out this. And they're kind of stuck in there. So you just kind of get them out. Okay, ready? Just like I said. And let's flip her over. So you see how that lines up? These two are just going to fit straight into that, like that. Just like the rest. Go ahead and keep your thumb depressed on it so it doesn't fall through. Again, you're just going to go ahead and now with your tool, whether it be your socket wrench or what, you'll just go ahead and tighten that up. And there you go. Now we have the locking tuner. I put one here so you can see. You want to just turn this, right? So it's down a little bit, about that far. All you want to do now is run your string right through the tuner hole and pull it as tight as possible, okay? So no slack. Check out this. We have no slack whatsoever. We're pulling as hard as we can, and then at the same time, we're gonna reach under here and turn this till it locks in position, and I just bend it straight up. Okay, now it's locked. Go ahead and just tighten it up a little bit. And you'll notice, when you look here on the tuner, it gets the pitch very quickly. So what you want to use is a pair of pliers or some vice grips, and very carefully not to chip the fretboard. Grab onto the nut where you can get as much meat as possible. Do not clamp this down too hard and then pull straight up. Okay? Now, on the Mexican ones, if they're glued in, it should be done with tight bond or something soft enough. Now, if you're a little concerned about it, you may want to heat it up a little bit with your hairdryer before you pull it out. And then to put the new nut in, this is going to be the new bone nut from Fender. The part number is here. And essentially, all we're going to do is use a toothpick. Use a toothpick, a little bit of tight bond, just to apply. Do not use super glue, although you know, if you feel confident, you can put a dot of super glue in there, but you know what, to me it's too easy. Tight bond is great. Plus the tight bond will fill in any of the gaps when you place it in, and you're just going to press it right in. Press it right in nice and tight. And then what I like to do is then put the E-string and the E-string on with low tension to kind of center it and hold it down. And if you feel the need, you may have to shape it or cut into it, go from there. So if you don't have any nut files to actually cut the grooves in case you need that, what I want you to use is 400 grit sandpaper, something like this, super easy. And then I want you to just wrap it as tightly as you can around the actual string. This is the 42 gauge string, and then put it right into the slot and use the string as right? And just remember, a little bit goes a long way. So when you see even a little bit of dust, then try, right? If you're not expert at this yet, you need to just take little baby steps, okay? Or buy at least 2 nuts so you know if you mess up the first one, you know what to do on the second one. And again, that's a fast way. Instead of a nut file, since you don't need files to cut grooves, they're already cut from Fender, you just need to be able to smooth and widen them a little bit. And I do prefer that when you're sanding this, instead of going flat like this, come at an angle, sand at an angle like this. And again, use the string, the girth of the string. See that little bit of there? Use the girth of the string to kind of file that spot in there. So the most important thing when I'm talking about upgrades to a made in Mexico Strat is some Strats, what happens is we get what's called fret sprout. Now this is common with all guitars. It has nothing to do with being made in Mexico, but it's something you want to address with a guitar that you shouldn't see as much in an American series, but we'll go from there. What that is when they cut the frets, they cut them to the width of the fretboard, okay? Well, what happens is the fretboard shrinks because it's wood, and then the frets, we call it sprout, pop out, but really they didn't pop out, the fretboard shrank. So if you're feeling the sides of your fretboard, they're either sticking out and rough or they're sharp. This is something that if you have a little patience in an afternoon, you can do it very inexpensively with 2 things. You need some painter's tape and a cuticle file that you can get at Walgreens. Okay, so essentially all you want to do is take your painter's tape and carefully and very nicely cover what is going to be very important, your fretboard. Now, most guitar players that do this will do the entire fretboard. It's up to you. If you don't want to do the entire fretboard, with tape, you can use tape and then tear it off and then do the next section, What I want you to do is basically, especially if you have a maple fretboard, that's why I'm using maple. Maple's the hardest. Go ahead and tape the ends like so. Okay, using the flat surface. And think of it like painting a house or anything you've ever painted, where anything you don't want paint on, you're going to go ahead and cover up, okay? Push really firm. Painter's tape won't hurt anything, I promise, not even the rosewood. Sometimes the rosewood, after you pull the painter's tape off, will need some oil or something. And again, just look and make sure you're covered. Then once you do that, take the rough inside of your cuticle file, right? And just file those ends. And again, at this point, we're not talking about a rough enough sandpaper to do any significant damage. If you have a nicer cuticle file like this, you'll have 3 kinds. Then we'll go to the second kind. And again, kind of now we're just catching all the rough spots we caught with the rough sand. And then lastly, watch this. We use the fine end, which will probably be 12,000. If I was guessing, this is probably 2,400. This is probably 3,600 to 4,000, and this is 8,000 to 12,000. So if that helps, if you want to know what the sandpaper variant they're using is. And again, just use this. In this, you can just buff the whole thing. You can even use some steel wool at the end if you'd like, and that will get all that off. And what's beautiful of this, if you do everything right, even if it's not perfect, it'll get you by. And if you take it in for service, now you know what is entailed in doing that. Another huge improvement you can do, especially if you're gigging, is do this. Take your basically these 2 screws out, and what I like to do then is make sure you grab just a basic cloth, pull this out, okay? You don't need to do anything. Put the cloth underneath it. Okay, so what we're gonna do here is cut these. The reason is because we'll get a strong connection. There's enough wire to mess with. Super easy, right? We have the old one. Let's go ahead and take it off. So all you want to do is just take a socket wrench, put it right there, hold it there. This is going to be super easy. If you notice, I'm using a plastic one. This is one I just use in the shop. It's fast, it's easy. And the rest by hand. Now here's what I want to show you. So the part you want to get, I'll put a link to that as well, is an actual Switchcraft American-made input jack, and it is much better. Just looking at the quality of the thickness of the pieces, it's just a better switch. You can feel it immediately when you touch it. So we're just going to go ahead and solder that in. And here's the cool tip. What you always want to remember is the shaft of the input jack is ground. This is the signal, the crown, right? This piece right here. That black piece of plastic, that is the piece of plastic that is separating the metal here from here. Again, this will always be ground. This will always be hot and ground. So why is that important? Well, it's important because when you look at an input jack, right, you can tell which parts touch these cables. So when we put it in here, we can see this part touches, this part's touching the hot. See how it's just touching right in that spot? Hot, this is hot. And this part, the part that's touching the shaft, this is the ground. So that is your tang for your ground, and that is the tang for your hot. It'll always work this way, okay? So again, super easy. This will always be ground. This is hot. And that's why when you've got your cable and you're trying to touch to see if it works when it's in an amp, you're always touching the end. That's the hot part, ground, and again, that's how it works. So essentially you're gonna put your ground wire to the part that is touching the shaft and the hot wire to the part that touches the tip of the input jack. Okay, so a couple things to remember. When you're soldering with wires that are attached to the guitar, in other words, you're working in a close environment to the guitar, you need to make sure you put this rag or something over the top of the guitar, especially with solder. The solder has the center of the solder has basically a chemical that will spit all over the guitar. And it's very important that you go ahead and add solder to the actual wires. And the reason it is because that will make a better connection when you attach it to the input jack. Now on the input jack, you can go ahead if you'd like and start with it actually being in the input jack tray. The only thing that's important is that when you line it up, you definitely want this piece right here downward facing because it's got to fit into that slot, and that's going to help you later. So now all you want to do now, if you can see this, is we want to make sure we solder the actual, these are the tangs that the wires are going to connect to. We want to start with having them already have solder. And again, we've already identified black is going to be ground and it will go to the shaft part. And I like, everybody's a little different, I like to solder outside in. In other words, come from the wire from the side and come right in. See? And just because I know the wires are then out of the way, which is nice. And do not blow on the solder. You can get cold solder joints. You just wait for the temperature to actually die down itself. And if it's too hot and liquidy, your gun's too hot. And see what I was talking about, how this is going to line up just like at the bottom. And you make sure the wire's out of the way. You put it straight down. And that's it. Okay, so another huge thing you can do, which is strap locks. Once you make an investment in a guitar, you may want to put strap locks. Now strap locks, there's going to be different kinds. There's going to be the Dunlop style. There will be the Schaller style. If it makes you feel any better, Fender uses a Schaller like knockoff style. Essentially, all you want to do is take out your old strap button, okay, and take the dust out of there. And then what I like to do is take a toothpick. Again, this is something you can do from home. That's the important part. Sorry, toothpick and some Titebond. I break off the pointy end. Sometimes I cut it, which is actually better. And just again, little liberal with the Titebond. Stick it inside there. And then what we want to do is just cut it off with wire cutters to make it nice and smooth. Now that we've done that, we'll go ahead and grab the strap lock, which is going to be the receiver end of your strap locks, and line it in with the hole and use some force, because now that toothpick's in the way and it's going to be soft because of the glue. That's why I like the glue, because it makes it soft and easy to do in there. And then you bite in there, and then trust me, now it's in there. So when you put your strap lock on, I mean, it's there, right? And more importantly, this is what I like to see. So that's your strap lock.